And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, Interim General Manager at WEIU. My co-host is Muhammad's favorite son, Tristan Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Tina Held is back from Carle and the Charleston Chamber, kind of that dual hat person. Welcome.
Oh, glad to be here.
And our special guest today, who's somewhat a little apprehensive, but I think she's going to be fine when she realizes we're just a bunch of goofballs in here, is Sarah Ray. I'm going to let you introduce yourself with your actual job title so we can I don't mess this up.
Right, my name is Sarah Ray. I work for Carle Occupational Medicine. I've been with Carle for 5 years. I'm the CMA coordinator and work comp case coordinator for occupational medicine.
And I know we're mainly here today to talk about occupational medicine, and so I'm going to ask the simplest question out there. What is occupational medicine for the folks who don't know, or maybe students on campus who don't understand what that means?
Sure. So occupational medicine basically covers anything through a job related, like if you needed a pre-employment physical or you just need vaccines, fit testing, work comp, even fit for duty testing. Like even if you get hurt and it's off work, say you get hurt at home and you had to, for whatever reason, like you hurt your knee or something, you're off work, and they want to make sure that you're fit enough to come back to work, we do fit for duty evals too. So we would just have you kind of jump through some rigorous hoops to see that you were fit to go back to that job. So basically anything work related.
Could you tell us a little bit about your training and education to become the occupation you're in?
So for the CMA position itself, I just took a course through Parkland at Carle. It's mostly hands-on. You do a short course through Parkland and the rest of it's just on-the-job training. But for OCMED, I went to a lot of training. I did numerous days in Urbana. I had to do drug screen training and breath alcohol training. And the drug screen training is like a week of different stuff because we do hair testing, so we have to cut hair, and we do urine testing. We have to do, I don't know, we used to have two different machines. Now we have one, so we had to do testing on all the machines. I had to do spirometry testing, which is what UPS, like hazmat people would do. So it's where I have to have them breathe in this machine, and basically we just gauge what they breathe. But to interpret that and do it all correctly, it was like a 2-day class. So there's just a lot of training.
Yeah, what's the eligibility like for the services you offer? Is it just people with insurance, or what is that like?
No, so basically occupational medicine, for the most part, your company pays for. Anything you need done, it's the company pay. Mostly, but not always. So like most pre-employment physicals, the company is going to pay for. We have started doing self-pay though. So like if our physicals are $75, we would typically charge the company. But if you are paying yourself and the company is going to reimburse you, then we bill insurance now and do self-pay where you can pay up front. But for the most part, it's company pay.
The one thing that's right now prevalent across the country is stress and mental health. How does that play into occupational, med? Because that's a tougher one to gauge, and you get that look on your face. but I mean, but it's so important right now. If someone is really
sure.
mentally health challenged or stressed at work, and they come to you, what do you do? I guess
we don't get a lot of that per se. We do get people a little stressed out.
Yeah.
But more specific things, like we just had the COVID mandate, the vaccine mandate. We've had a lot of people with questions and concerns. Basically, Kelly talks to them. That's my provider. She's the doctor of nurse practitioner. She's our occupational medicine provider. She talks to them. Sometimes we send them up north to talk to Dr. Scott, who is here. He's kind of over OCMED, but we don't get a lot of that.
Okay.
I mean,
are you thinking that maybe
privately, maybe, but not like.
Okay.
I suppose, though, in that
level.
particular question, you would, if there's someone saw a need for that type of services, you and Kelly could direct them. Or
for sure.
Help
and
them get
and
to
there
the,
are work comps that are that way. We have work
Right.
comps that see psych, so it's no different. Like even we had a guy that was in an accident, and it was a horrific accident though, but he sees psych, and he will probably for years from that. So it's a work comp thing. They pay for that. But for any kind of mental health, as long as it's connected to work comp, then we would handle that like we would anything else.
Yeah,
get them to the right
there is no
person.
right answer with that right now because it's not new, but it's more like in the news now.
Yes.
That's what I want to talk about a little bit. Well, like when you think about your daily duties, I mean, when do you see people all day long, or do you run courses? How's that work?
Depends on the day.
Okay.
There are some days where I spend more time on the computer than anything, but I do a little bit of everything at work. So I do from scheduling to billing to rooming my own patients. So on a busy day, I might do a drug screen, a breath alcohol test, a Department of Transportation physical, or I might be on the phone for 4 hours handling work comp claims. So my days vary.
Okay. On that, you were talking about a little off air about the Department of Transportation physical. So anybody that's applying for a job at IDOT, or is it continuous ones that are already working there? Or how's that?
So a DOT, an actual DOT physical, Department of Transportation, is anybody that has like a CDL, anybody that drives a truck anywhere. Not specifically for IDOT, but like UPS, FedEx, the farmers. We have a lot of self-pay guys that need a DOT, what's called a DOT physical, but it's a huge packet. It's probably like 4 pages long of information they have to fill out, and there's a lot of requirements in order to pass a DOT physical. So it's pretty...
so regular farmers have to do that as well?
Depending on what they haul.
Okay.
Just certain farmers. It depends, and I don't know the complete regulations. Every CDL driver has to have one, but just because you have one doesn't mean you have a CDL. So it depends on what you drive.
Okay.
So many tons, so many things you haul. And there's like interstate and federal. So if you just drive in the state of Illinois, you get like a different card versus if you drive from here to New York, you get a different card. But there's lots of rules. Like if they're diabetic, they have certain rules they have to follow. If you have sleep apnea, believe it or not, you have to bring in
we would hope
compliance
that would be-
report.
I hope, yeah.
Yes.
They have to bring in like all kinds of paperwork and proof. So I spend a lot of time during chart prep and calling patients and.
Well, if someone fails, is that the tougher part of your job? I mean, do you notify the company or the individual? As I get a little nosy now.
Most of the time, I've noted, at least for us, most of the time the people that fail are self-pay. So it's us just telling
Okay.
them. But a lot of times we'll try to help them. Like if it's a hypertension or blood pressure thing, we'll give them a 3-month card. They get a time to go follow up with their primary care provider, try to fix it. If it's just something you've been everywhere and there's nothing we can do, then we just this week we had to tell a guy, no. Like he's had heart issues and his last test just put him too low, and no matter what, if everything else could be 100%, his new test just said no. And that was rough. I had to talk to him about it, and
That's probably the tough part of the job, right?
yeah, it's their livelihood, so.
What if someone's right on that line of 50-50? Is there such a thing in your business? Or
Depends on what it is. If it's right in the line of like hypertension, that's a little something you can play with. But for cardiology purposes, no.
Okay.
So if a cutoff, and this will go into something a little above me, but if your ejection fraction, which is how your heart produces, if it's like under 38, if you're at 37 and the cutoff's 38, no.
Okay.
Like those are like big deal things.
Those
but
are some stringent lines on that
Yeah.
aspect. That makes
Well,
sense. So
Yeah, and that's just, patient safety.
Oh, for sure.
But health safety.
Well, it's all safe for
Everybody,
everybody, not just the individual.
Yeah.
I mean,
For us on the road.
We want
Yes,
safe drivers. on there.
absolutely.
yes.
So, Tristan, go ahead and ask a question. I'm going to
Yeah.
think how I want to word my next question
Okay.
correctly.
So you're talking about how your days are very different sometimes, where a lot of times it's just online stuff. My mom is a retired on-call nurse. She worked at Carle for 40 years, something like that, a very long time. And she said that's something she really had to adjust to, is that move away from the bedside manner to just online. How do you navigate that? Both of you could probably answer this.
It's hard for me because before I was a CMA, I was a CNA, and I dealt strictly with my patients. I didn't do paperwork, I didn't do phones, I didn't do anything online. So it's hard. But I kind of like it because it gives me, it breaks up the monotony of my day. So if I have 12 drug screens, I will stop and I'll be on the phone with work comp because it gives me a little bit of, I like it. At first it was a hard adjustment, I guess you could say, because just sitting there all day. I mean, there's times I'm on hold for 20 minutes.
But think about the reward you get if you're allowing people to continue in their livelihood, like you just
Right,
said.
yeah.
That's a pretty good reward.
Oh yeah, I completely like all that I do. I'm glad that I have such a huge variety of things I get to do. I like my days. Don't get me wrong, they're stressful days, but it's nice to break it all up. I don't like to do, if I had just to do computer work and phone work, I couldn't do it. But the fact that I can do all of it makes my days good.
That makes sense.
On the other side of what you just said, though, are people right now that for some reason don't want to work. Everybody has help wanted signs in their businesses. But I mean, how does that play into what you do? Do people ever come in and say, hey, I don't want to work, so don't, do they say that, or do they?
Work comp, yes. We've had a few people who have just said, I don't want to go in until this day. But so work comp, though, it works like anything else. Kind of like nowadays in the medical world, we are under this impression that we should just walk in and tell the provider what we want, and that should be what happens. And there are some providers that do kind of listen, but our goal is not to necessarily err on the side of the company or whatever the patient wants, but what's best for everybody. So Kelly very rarely will take a person off work. She'll give work restrictions. A lot of companies can't do the work restrictions, so therefore the patient is off work, but it's not for lack of trying. Like, she'll try really hard. I think we've only ever taken 2 people completely off work, and they were bad injuries, but they get a little frustrated sometimes. But she's very good about talking through things with people. So
What about someone who's said they're scared about going to work because of COVID? I mean, is that a real excuse? Because I heard that's, a lot of times that's why people aren't going to work right now. I mean, how do you deal with that, or have you? And
we haven't dealt with any of it in occupational medicine at all, but every once in a while I'll room for convenient care, which is our walk-in clinic. And I did have a girl come in who had COVID, was still not feeling well, and was past her Illinois Department of Public Health. Like, we get 14 days. So she was past that mark, and it was time for her to go back, and she was scared to go back. I'm not 100% sure how they handled that, because unless there's I mean, that would, I think, would be up to the company too, because a lot of companies aren't willing to work with you. Some are, but not everyone is, and to them that would not be a reason.
Yeah, I'm on this group of
So I don't know.
different TV stations from around the country. It's called the university, whoever has university license, and everybody has different rules right now. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you either have to go back to work, or this one place is going, you got to work 5 out of the 10 days from home, and so there's really it's impossible to find an answer that's just
Yeah.
universal right now.
No, for sure.
And in the world that you guys are in, it's just absolutely nuts. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, and since we're occupational medicine, our department itself handles all the return to work COVID for Carle, which is a lot. So me and Kelly share an office, so I'm in there all the time. We get a ton of return to work phone calls just from it's our own employees. So you can kind of tell the people that are not wanting to go back to work, but I mean, we have really sick people, but again, and everybody has a different answer. You might go back in 2 days, you might go back in 4 days, but yeah, there's nothing that's universal. There's just no way, I think, for that to be a thing.
Also, flu shots, thing going on right now. Pretty important time for that. Where are you guys offering those locally right now?
We just actually did 2 drive-through clinics on Thursday and Friday. So we had people pre-register, and then we had staff that stood out front. And they just drove through, and we shot a bunch of people. So before COVID, we didn't do drive-through clinics. We did walk-in clinics. Since COVID, we've done the drive-through clinics. After we do a couple of those, it's more, if you're a Carle patient, all you do is just call our number, and you schedule a nurse visit. It's walk-in. I mean, you can basically anytime between 8 and 4, you can do a nurse visit. If you already have a doctor's appointment scheduled and you're there, 9 times out of 10, they're going to ask you if you want your flu shot. But if not, you just say, hey, I have an appointment coming up and I want my flu shot. But they're pretty easy and flexible. If you're not a Carle patient, then we don't do the walk-in or nurse visits, just because it's a lot harder for billing purposes. So we typically send people like CVS or Walgreens, because a lot of times they do the free flu. So, and then we do off-site flu. We've been doing safety storage for 3 years now, where we go to safety storage, and we kind of get a sign-up sheet where we know ahead of time how many people, and then we stay for an hour or two, and we do flu testing, or we do flu vaccines there, and then we do City of Charleston for our second year, where people, I think we did 50, maybe close to 60 last year. I think they kind of get the word out, hey, these guys are going to be here for a couple of hours, and then we have people filter in the whole time we're there.
If people are COVID vaccinated, should they still get flu shot? Are they similar or the same, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, for everything that we've been told is even if you're COVID vaccinated, you should still get your flu shot.
Okay. Now, when somebody comes in with a work comp claim, at what point do you have to get the doctor involved and talk? I mean, do they set another appointment? Are you in on those meetings, or how's the doctor become involved?
So when I know for sure that it's work comp and we see the patient, Kelly sees every patient.
Okay.
So I help them fill out all the paperwork. I reach out to the companies. I get all of the contact information, all of the work comp insurance information, and then Kelly sees the patient. We have these sheets we call illness injury forms that covers everything. It'll have who they are, where they work, when they were injured, what the injury is, and then she's got a whole list of things that she can check for if we need to refer them to PT or orthopedics or anywhere. And then next appointment, and then I take that sheet and I schedule either with them, or that's when, sometimes with work comp, that's where you take a pause. Like if she wants physical therapy or orthopedics, then I have to tell them I will call you as soon as I get an approval. Then I have to reach out to the company. Then I have to reach out to the work comp adjuster, which can take days. If you get hurt today and your company's on top of it today, I still may not have an answer for almost a week, because work comp is not fast moving. So then usually I talk to the adjuster. I have to send them all the notes from the visit, the forms that the patient signed, and then we get approvals. And it's a process, work comp.
But along those lines, that's kind of the beauty of having the department, because we all know we don't like to do paperwork.
Oh, yeah.
And you get caught up in a 1-800 line.
Yeah.
So if you're doing all that for the client, then that's a win-win.
Does
Oh,
Carle
yeah.
handle most of the work comp claims in this area? I mean, is the competitors do it, or how do you?
I think it's probably just as much between Sarah Bush as, I mean, they
Okay.
probably might even see a little more than we do. They've been here a lot longer, and so we have contracts through some companies. Other than that, it's kind of, you can go wherever you want. And I think a lot of
Okay.
people, since Sarah Bush has been here so long, they go with Sarah Bush. So there's certain companies, I don't know if I should really say company names, but there's a
No,
few companies, we've seen some of their work comp, but I know their main place is to go to Sarah Bush. So, but if they're full, they'll send them to us, because I think
I think it's safe to say you guys. I mean, even though you're
Absolutely, yeah.
competitors, you guys really do work
Oh, yeah.
closely
Yes.
together. 'Cause, I
and
mean,
we send a ton of people to them.
Yeah.
Since our orthopedics is an hour from here, I call Sarah Bush Ortho a lot and send people there. I've had to send people for EMGs and stuff to Decatur, so yeah.
I have a question again about that. But so if someone came through, say, like our walk-in clinic, the convenient care, and they had like a cut or a wound or a broken bone or whatever, so they go on into convenient care, is that at the point when do they disclose that, hey, this happened at work? Or probably they're
or
thinking
should
about
you?
their injury.
Or
Yeah.
should you, if you're injured at work,
Yes.
always?
Well, it's a personal choice, but so we have a lot of people, our front desk staff that check in, they're pretty good now. They know if there's any kind of injury, they typically ask, was it at work? Sometimes the patients will say no or say they're unsure. At that point, if they're unsure, they say no, they'll go to convenient care regardless, because we will only see them if they know it's work comp.
Yeah.
But then usually they'll call me and I'll go in there and talk to them, and I'll just give them options like, where do you work, what do you do, and I kind of tell them, like, if you're really injured, like if you are going for X-rays, I just tell them, listen, if you don't want to file work comp, that's fine, but if you're potentially going to need surgery or you have a fracture, you're going to pay for that out of pocket. So I just kind of give them all of it, it's your choice, and also have you reach out to the company, because a big thing with companies is you need to contact your boss, somebody over you, and let them know you're injured and you're seeking treatment, because we've had a lot of companies that are frustrated, not at us, but the patient. Then I have to go back in there and be like, so your boss says you need to go call them. They're not happy at all. They didn't know you were coming. And then that's just not the good way to handle it. But I'll go to convenient care and talk to them if I'm there. If it's weekends, convenient care will just see them anyway, and they'll fill out the paperwork, and sometimes we have to weed it out afterwards. It's
Interesting.
work comp is very interesting.
Go ahead, Tris.
Yeah, in the occupational medical field, is there, like, what is the supply of workers like? Is there a demand for that now, or maybe just healthcare in general? What is that like?
For occupational medicine, I think it's, at least for us, we're still fairly small, even in Urbana. It's not a huge area. I think we have 4, I guess you wouldn't know, look at me looking at I think we have 4 or 5 providers in Urbana. I think there's always going to be a need for sure, because you're always going to have injured workers. You're always going to need physicals to go to work. We're always going to do drug screens. But I think for this area, there's not, and we have Sarah Bush here. So we got 2 big, huge clinic names, and
I think, though, a lot of it would be, to answer your question, I think it's super important because, well, one of the ways I see it is that the companies want you to get back to work as soon as possible for their livelihood. They want you to have yours, but if we didn't have this OcMed process, or the one at Sarah Bush or wherever, you're at the mercy of, oh, I can't get in to see my doctor for 2 to 3 weeks. That doesn't help anybody.
Yep. Work comp claims. I mean, have you ever had to go to court? Does it ever have to go to court for if you're battling a company?
thankfully, I have not ever had to go to court, but we do have had a handful of people that have lawyers, and I've interacted with the lawyers. It's basically just me giving them the information. But there's a handful of people that we've done it for. I have a lady right now that we're still, every single conversation we have, I have to chart it and send even the conversations to the lawyer. So.
And that's just because of disagreement from the employer and you and yours. I mean, not you,
And
but
the findings.
The findings, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
What you said something about it intrigued me a while ago, and I'm going to go backtrack a little bit here, but. Is there a certain clientele that you see most of your work comp claims? Is it farmers? Is it construction workers? I guess that would be the one. I mean, is there anything, or is there something you could?
Factories.
Factories
is our biggest.
That's okay.
Or even.
I don't want you to name names here, but
No, I was trying to think of what to call this place, but I guess.
manufacturing factories, or not?
Manufacturing's, yes.
I mean, is it, not to be morbid, is it usually
Warehouse, I guess, is what I was
is it
looking
fractures
for.
or is it cuts or abrasions or stuff in people's eyes? Or
A lot of back strain. I
We
bet.
get a lot of back pain,
Oh.
muscle pain. We've had tears, a few tears
Yeah.
that require surgery. I'd say back more than anything. In
Oh,
fact,
I guess lifting all day. I mean,
yeah.
repetitive motion from hands,
Yeah.
carpal tunnel.
We've done a ton of carpal tunnel, at least referrals. We get a lot. So you have to have an EMG, which is the test to do to determine if you have carpal tunnel. We get a lot of denials when we send them for those. So we get a lot of wrist pain, hand pain. And honestly, Kelly, in the whole 3 years we've been doing it, I think we've only had one laceration. But convenient care, in our off time, convenient care gets them. So
Okay.
I get all the work comp from them, but they just did 2 lacerations this week.
So
that are-
it's the
yeah.
second and third.
Yes. So even though my occupational medicine department, we're only there till 4 and 4:30, but our convenient care is up until 8, and they'll still do all the work comp. I just do all the paperwork
That
on the
makes
back
sense.
later.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're talking to Sarah Ray and Tina Held from Carle today about occupational medicine. Interesting, because as we're talking about it, I get millions of things going on in my head, and but is there a fun part of your job? I mean, I know you're dealing with injuries and complaints and a lot of paperwork, but is it fun too at all?
I mean, I just have fun in general, though. So I do. Like, I have fun with just with my patients. I have fun, even if. Clearly if they're really hurt, but we goof around. I see some of the same people over and over and over, so we make jokes all the time, like, oh, you're back, and we have fun with it. I like all that I do. We do drug screens a lot, and I've had very sketchy people come in, so that's kind of fun in a weird way. We've had people try to smuggle in urine. I had a guy actually drop a cup of pee in front of me and say, oh, I can't take that in. And, you have to keep a professional face when you're like, no, you can't take that with you because I can't let you take urine.
Oh.
So we see a lot of things that are.
You answered my next question, though. Is there any crazy stuff that the scene that you can
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about? So that's
Yes.
any other stories like that come to mind?
Just, we've had a lot of that smuggling in urine, people.
But
Most of them come up with concoction stories. Like a guy gave me a whole full-blown story. Do you think that I went to my neighbor's house and they were smoking a lot of marijuana? It was a lot, and I had to walk through their apartment, and so now I'm here for this drug screen. Oh, well, I think you'll be fine. Like, I get a lot of weird stuff like that, like a whole 20-minute stories, and I'm just like, okay.
The medical field, interesting.
Yes.
So, Tracy, go.
Always.
Yeah, but, at least appreciate the creativity.
Yeah,
Some of those
yes, some of them are like geniuses. I think they come up with a lot of ways to pass their
Yeah.
drug tests these days, so.
Also, what's the learning curve into specifically OcMed, where you have to learn like some of the various testing elements?
Is
that
it
you had to-
continuous as well?
You have to get certified
Yes.
for various
So,
things you're talking about.
For like this spirometry testing, which again, we don't do a lot of that here, but we do for like UPS hazmat. We have to train for that every couple of years. The drug testing specifically, it's every 5 years. But we have constant things we're learning. Things constantly change. So the lady that's in charge of it all is in our band. Her name is Mary. She kind of keeps us in the loop if there's anything. We deal with certain labs like Psychmedics, Alere, Quest. If they send out any information, she sends it to us. So there may not be like actual classes, but there is continuing things we learn, like continuing education in a sense. But then actual going back to get certified again, you have to do that every 5 years.
Okay, let's let her brief for a second. Tina, talk a little bit about Carle in general. About do you have a nursing shortage, need for nurses, or what's the needs?
I'm not sure how many. I think they're pretty well staffed right now. I don't work in nursing, but I know that there are always applications are coming in. Always new graduates will come out again. The last class, and I can speak to that just because my daughter will have her RN in December, and that was the class that kind of had some difficulties with clinicals because of COVID. So that's been a tough go, but I think they're pretty good. I think the other thing I was going to say regarding nursing and Sarah's job is when people hire on to come to work at Carle, they have to go through a battery of OcMed type things.
Yep.
And because we have Sarah and Kelly there, they're able to do that in-house.
What are some of the things they have to do? I mean, I know you said, they have to do a physical fitness test or what?
For like pre-employments?
Yeah.
Well, specifically, we do EIU's pre-employments, which is a lot different than certain ones. So I'll use them as an example. So for EIU, they do vision, and that's distance, that's color vision. We do a UA dip just to check to see if you have healthy urine. So it's urine analysis, not a drug screen. So we do two for EIU. We do a drug screen and a UA dip. We do hearing, and then EIU even does a lift test. So I have 4 25-pound weighted sandbags, and I have like a 10-pound weighted sandbag, and I think they have to lift between 10 and 50 pounds. And I just put them in bags they lift. And I feel like I'm leaving something out for them. There's this, that's more extensive. I do another pre-employment physical for a company that if they just pass a drug screen, they're basically good to go. So, and Kelly goes in and sees all of these patients. So after I do all that stuff, she'll go in and see them. She does a once over, head to toe, checks for hernias, asks all kinds of questions. But that's probably one of the more extensive ones where they do vision, hearing, lifting, a UA. That's probably the most we typically do. DOTs sometimes require a little bit more, but that's probably the most we do for pre-employment.
Interesting. Misconceptions about your job? People when they hear you're in workers' comp and occupational med?
Most people, for some reason, when they hear OcMed, just associate me with drug screens. Like, that's all I do. Even some of the people that come in and do the drug screens, like, oh, you have to do this all day? And I'm just thinking, if you only knew. Like, this is like a tiny quarter of what I actually do all day, so.
Well, I have a question along those lines then. With the legalization of marijuana,
You
has
read my
that
mind, yeah.
increased? Or do you have any companies here locally, not asking you to name any names,
Sure.
that are using that now, or they have to come up with an acceptable amount, or does it depend on
So it depends.
what they do?
It depends on the company. So some people come in, it's kind of hard to explain, but they get what we call passports, and it's just a sheet of paper, it has a barcode on it. We scan the barcode, it tells us the test-ish. Sometimes it's specific, and I could tell you that they cut out THC. Other times I have no idea what they ordered. But we do have local companies that we manually do drug screens. So when they come in, they don't have the passport. I actually pull up the drug screen myself, and I will say, I've only had 2 that I know of, companies locally that have quit testing for THC completely. Other than that, everyone has left it in that I can tell you specifically. But the one company that took it out was all their people were popping for marijuana. So when it became legal, they just took it off. And I think though, but if you're injured at work, same thing. Like, and some of these people have a huge misconception of marijuana is legal and they're not drug testing, so I can just go get high. I had a guy tell me that I weld better high. I can't wait, and I was like, wait. I mean, you understand though that you can't be high at work. And no, he didn't. He was literally like, no, it's illegal. No. It's not legal to be high at work though, just like you can't drink at work. So that was like, he just didn't get it, right? And he just didn't get it. So that was kind of scary. But so I know the specific couple of companies, like if you're injured or whatever, they'll still drug test you and the THC goes back in.
Wow.
So just for pre-employment purposes, they took it out.
I was actually wondering if we were going to get through this show because we didn't know much, but we could continue going on. This is fascinating.
Yes.
Any final thoughts, Tristan?
No, that's all I had.
Tina, any?
No.
All right. Sarah?
I think I'm...
Anything we didn't cover that you want to get out?
No, I just want to make sure we get it out that for any companies locally that we can go on site and do flu shots in clinics, and like I do mass fit testing and we go on site to them. So it makes it easier if you have a big group of people. So
There you go. Well, Tina, great seeing you again,
Yes.
as always.
Thanks for having us.
Tristan, good job.
yes, thank
Thank
you
you.
so
And
much.
Sarah, you did fine. You were all worried. You did absolutely great. So
Thank you.
We are WEIU. Everybody have a great Monday. We'll be back next week.